If you're listening to this right now, I think it's safe to say you enjoy podcasts. Well, what if I told you that today I have the guy on the call who invented podcasting? I have Adam Curry joining me, and yes, I'm talking the former MTV superstar. But the wildest part of his story is not MTV or him being on Joe Rogan 6 times or even what he's done in the tech world. It's the plot twist where Jesus crashes in and completely reroutes his life while using the things that had already been built into his life. And now he's on a mission to raise up 1,000 Christian voices through his new platform called Godcaster. So I'm excited to jump in. The twists and turns in his story are going to be fascinating. You're not going to want to miss this. Keep listening. You're listening to Java with Jen, and I'm your host, Jenalise Samuel. On this show, I bring the simplicity of hearing God's voice into everyday life in a no-nonsense, authentic, and super practical way. With coffee in hand and real life in our faces, let's do this. Hey everybody, welcome back to Java with Jen. All right, we've got Adam Curry here with us. Many of you know him from MTV in the 90s. Others of you don't know that what he has done has impacted your life, particularly as you are listening to this podcast, because he is the co-inventor of podcasting. So Adam, I'm pumped to have you here. It's been good getting to know you.
It's been good getting to know you. We met each other a little under a year ago, I think, at NRB. And I was so impressed with what you're doing. And actually, you kind of have my old hair, so that's...
You know, it's funny you say that. You were pretty iconic for your hair back in the 90s too, right?
It took my wife exactly 20 minutes to do it every single morning. It involved, I had to wash it every single morning. Then the mousse went in. Then the hair dryer with the round brush, and then the teasing, and then the Aquanet, and I was good to go. I could knock a dent in a pack of butter.
My God. So your wife did your hair for you every day?
Yes, she did. Yes.
They didn't do that on set or anything?
No, when I got to MTV in the mid to late 80s, it was really, you have more gear for this show than they had there. They had literally 2 cameras, a camera operator for each. This was all back in the day. It was almost pretty much analog switchers. There was no wardrobe. There was no makeup. The lighting guy came in like once a week and he said, all right, stand there. And he'd knock the lights around and said, okay, you put a sticker on the ground. That's your mark. That's where you got to be. It was very low tech.
What in the world? Okay, that's actually really encouraging. For anybody who wants to build something significant, they usually get stuck on the tech side and they're like, I can't do it. I don't have enough equipment.
But that was also part of the charm, it was, and now we did have real sets, so that was different. We had one big studio. We probably had 5, maybe 7 sets in different parts of the studio, 5 that we used consistently. I don't know if you remember, there was one executive came in. She was the daughter of someone high up at NBC, if I recall correctly. And she decided to bring in this Japanese artist, and he created what we called the sand set. And it was literally a bed and a bedroom covered in sand that was glued on, and then some kind of epoxy was sprayed over it. Well, the result was that was just a mess. Okay, we're going to go to the sand set. Everybody would groan, oh no, because the sand would crack. It would stick to your clothes. There was always something weird going on at MTV. They were always trying to push the envelope, do creative things.
Yeah, no kidding. That's so crazy. Okay, true story. I actually was not allowed to watch MTV, so I didn't know you from back then, but some of my friends have asked me, they're like, wait, Adam Curry from MTV? Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So, okay, so it sounds like you're not a stranger to being kind of in the forefront of things, like MTV trying to cut edges, and then you were co-inventor of podcasting. Looking back though, what was there any part of your journey with MTV? I don't know how long you were there, but was there any part of your journey that looking back actually played a part in your faith of like you finding the Lord later?
No, Jen. So first of all, I need to say that I got saved a little less than 3 years ago. And I was 58. So this was late in life. And as I look back, I see everything led up to this. Everything the Lord had me do, put me through the cutting edge of initially cable television, satellite television, music television, which was groundbreaking in its own rules, the internet, podcasting. All of it has been necessary for me to go through to do the things I'm doing right now for his kingdom. I see it very clearly. And once I became aware of it, I'm like, I see what you did there. That's
Wow.
pretty cool. Yeah,
That's so
it's
cool.
really very obvious to me.
That's so cool. So, okay, so what did you give me this? Because since you've been in media, you've been in TV, you've probably seen, well, I don't know, you weren't in the church then, so maybe you didn't see it. I don't know if you see it now, but I feel like I grew up, there was a lot of the way that Karen Covell of Hollywood Prayer Network says it. She says it's impossible to hate who you pray for. And that's why she started Hollywood Prayer Network, getting the church to pray for Hollywood because the church used to really judge and point fingers and reject media and Hollywood and treat it like this was this big evil entity. So, what have you seen behind the scenes, being in the media and all that kind of stuff that Christians misunderstand about, especially how culture is shaped or the importance of being in that space?
I would say that people need to remember that the enemy is the prince of the power of the air, the power of the airwaves. I kind of extend that. So, yes, you need to pray for all people in media, certainly in Hollywood, because they are just being used by the enemy. These are not bad people. I mean, yeah, there's always people who do very bad things. I haven't really witnessed many horrible things myself, but you can see the in a milieu and things are just this way, or this is the things we say, or this is how we look at things. And I would say there's fear of being different, because if you're different, then you're going to be out pretty quickly. I mean, just as an example, it's a small little thing, but at a certain point, MTV said, "Okay, time for you to cut your hair." I'm like, I'll cut my hair when I want to do. You're not going to tell me that. They fired me at least 7 times over that. They kept bringing me back, but I kept getting fired. Now this was MTV and it was in New York, so it wasn't quite Hollywood. Yeah, the enemy takes hold of very unsuspecting people who probably do not have God in their lives, and he just runs with it. Yeah, everyone. Look, we got to love everybody, and they really need a lot of that. Absolutely. Yeah. And they need to be fortified for sure.
Yeah, that's so true. And you know, I remember when I was younger, my parents had said something judgmental about, I don't know, Michael Jackson or somebody in Hollywood. And I remember my older sister bursting into tears and getting so mad. And she was like, but they need Jesus too. And I
Hmm.
remember that being very poignant for me of like, yeah, they actually do. Like these people who are especially A-listers who can't hardly go anywhere without getting mobbed. I imagine that there's this dynamic of them feeling very lost and lonely, even though they're in the forefront, and that getting salvation to them or the gospel to them could be difficult. And so I've begun praying for a lot of different celebrities, many of who have actually come to meet the Lord. I'm praying for Joe Rogan right now, and we've talked about that before.
Hmm.
And so you have an unusual perspective, and maybe even go into how did you actually meet the Lord, getting saved, and how the gospel actually got to you?
And I'll start by saying that I've met people as recently as a month ago who said to me, "I was praying for you since I was 14 years old because I wanted to see you in heaven." And there have been people there's just, I mean, at least 50 to 100 people who have told me this, that they've been praying for me for decades. So it's important, and prayers do get answered, clearly. For me, my wife and I, we were living in Austin and decided it was time to move. I could work from anywhere, and Austin was getting kind of messy, and just it wasn't what it was like 15 years ago. Of course, when I was there 15 years ago, people said, "Ah, it's not like it used to be." Okay, I became one of those guys. I became the grumpy old Austin guy, and we were looking around. Where can we move to? And Tina said, "How about Fredericksburg?" I'm like, "Fredericksburg? Okay, I've been there before." And we opened up Zillow, put in some numbers, and like, that's a cool house. Now, this was the height of the housing boom in Austin. And so it was 2022, I guess. Yeah. And it had been on the market for 6 months, which was unheard of. It was a very contemporary home in the hill country. So no one was looking for that. We went out the next day, bought it, and then sold our house in Austin within 24 hours. And we moved out here within like 6 or 7 weeks. Fredericksburg is a very funny town. I mean, there's really only 11,500 people that live here on the weekends. We get 100,000 people coming in. We have lots of wineries, and it's touristy. But so many people that we've met here kind of have a similar story, and they all wound up finding God.
Wow.
And the way it worked for us is now during COVID, I actually looked around, and I'm very aware of who I'm working with. And My buddy Dave Jones, who we built Podcast Index with, he's also a partner in the Godcaster. He sent me this article by Naomi Wolf, who was, very left elitist. At least that's how I viewed her at the time. And she had written a couple of Substacks about these very rich, very liberal, left-wing, ungodly people, and how they were speaking at some of these dinner parties she was at. And she knew that they weren't bad people, but they were really saying pretty evil things. And she concluded, and she's Jewish, she concluded that, well, if there's bad like this, there has to be good. And she started her own journey and started praying and started coming closer to Jesus. And my friend gave me those articles. And then I looked around like, all these guys are Christians that I work with. What's wrong with me? So I literally approached it like a conspiracy theory. I'm like, moon landing, JFK, 9/11. Let me check out this God and Jesus thing. And that's literally how I looked at it. And so now my wife at the same time, we were discussing these things. She was kind of on her own journey, getting nudges. She would drive by a church here and she would hear, go in the church. And it's Episcopal church. That's, we actually wound up later going there once. So we were discussing this. We're both late 50s at this point. And, so it's always fun to discover things together. And what really happened is we were going to go on vacation, and this was still tail end of COVID. We're going to go to Aruba, and we're in the car on the way to the airport, 3 a.m, text message, flight canceled. Okay, this happened a lot in those days. We go back 2 days later, okay, in the car for the rescheduled flight, text message at 3:30, flight canceled. At this point, it almost makes no sense to go. But at the time, I work on Sundays to do my show. The No Agenda show, and I'd taken that off for vacation. And so we said, well, this doesn't make any sense to go on vacation. And we're like, I got Sunday off when we go to church. Okay. So we went to the Episcopal church. Was not really, I kind of like the hymns, to be honest about it, but it was a kind of an interesting vibe. And I'll shuttle through a whole bunch of things, but we wound up, upon a recommendation, Tina was going to Bridge Church here in Fredericksburg with Pastor Jimmy Pruitt. And it's a non-denominational church, worship team, which I learned is Christian for band. A lot of things I had to learn. And I would be watching the live stream while I was prepping for my show. And she'd come home. We'd be really excited to talk about the things that the pastor spoke about. And so we just kept growing and growing. And at the time, we were doing a podcast called Curry and the Keeper. We were actually just doing it to have fun, talk about the wineries out here, charcuterie boards. But then we started talking about our faith. And people start sending us books and all kinds of encouraging messages. I would say that Evidence That Demands a Verdict was really big for me because it's, very evidence driven. And I just started to pray and literally like the Alcoholics Anonymous, dear Lord, I'm a sinner. Repeat that 12 times. And I was just doing that over and over again. I remembered hearing a song by Stevie Wonder around that time, which I know I know all of Stevie Wonder's stuff, Back to the Songs in the Key of Life double album. And it's, if you feel your life so hard, why don't you just go have a talk with God? I'm like, maybe I should just talk to God. And so I start talking and I kind of think I'm getting stuff back. And so I'm just completely open to this, and I'm just praying for people, praying for healing, and I see things happening. And, it's like I didn't need any proof of anything. I was already in. I was already feeling good. We're doing this together, which is fantastic. So we're doing Bible study in the morning together. And then I really wanted to have dinner with our pastors, a pastor and his wife. They're both pastors. And so we finally set that up. And because I've only been watching it on YouTube, the first thing I say is, Pastor Jimmy, I really love your show, man. It's fantastic. He starts cracking up. My wife's like this. I say, and he's our age. He's a typical tattoo, guitar playing pastor. He's early 60s, but classically trained. Went to all the schools and universities, and but a West Texas boy. And he starts cracking up, and I said, "Well, I see how it works. You got your intro music, you got your promotional segments, you got your donation segment, you got your main thing here, you got an outro song." And so we realized that we have a lot in common. Of course, I come more from culture and he comes more from Christianity. And so we've actually become best friends. And we just started our own podcast called We Get to Do This. We just did episode 12, and
Oh,
it's been phenomenal. And of course, at a certain point, I figured that I could get up at 5 on Sundays and do some prep, go to church, come back, prep, and then do the show, which is kind of what I've been doing for the past couple of years. So, and Tina at the same time developed lots of friendships here, but really all these people here in Fredericksburg, there's many ex-intelligence, military, doctor, bankers, international arms dealers, diamond smugglers, but we all kind of wound up we all kind of wound up at Bridge Church. It's a fantastic community, and we're very active, and the church is there's always something going on at the church. And, so it's been such an incredible, enlightening path for us to just have God in our life, to have Jesus in our marriage, to every day improving how we listen. What are we hearing? We discuss it, as I said, a lot. There's small groups that we organize sometimes with friends. I'm really big into the music stuff, and of course, as I started to pay more attention, actually, turns out that 3 of the band members in Mercy Me, they listen to my podcast. They've been listening for years, and so through some connections, they said, "Well, we're going to be in San Antonio. Will you come to the show?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I come to the show. They're all wearing No Agenda T-shirts. They're like super fans. And so I'd never been to a contemporary Christian concert. And the first thing I notice is they put the words on the screen. This is a genius idea. Every
right.
concert should have this. But I was sold. I was completely sold. And since then, I've really, really gotten into that. Music has kind of dropped away from me. Maybe some country or classical, but I really wasn't too interested in the hits anymore. I lived in that for most of my life. So, and where I am now is that literally God putting me in a position to help faith-based radio stations transform to digital, which it's really struggling with, but also to help ministries and networks become their own real, true network with live and on demand. And at the same time, I'm really helping churches become radio stations for their local community with music, with information, with entertainment. And I say I, but there's a team of 4 people, and all glory to God, because he's just been giving us so much direction and lots of opportunities. So it's been amazing.
That's so cool. And we're going to dive into Godcaster a little bit because that's what you're talking about. You said something that I wanted to grab a hold of there, where you were describing that as you're just kind of exploring God and starting to pray, it seemed like he was talking back or giving things back to you. And, there's a passage in the New Testament, I want to say it's 2 John, that says that you have no need for a teacher. It's actually talking about false teachers that will try to establish themselves, but it says you have no need for a teacher because the anointing that is in you will teach you all things. And essentially that's speaking to the fact that Holy Spirit will guide you and will teach you even as a new believer. And granted, yes, we do need the church around us. We do need that, but it was, of course, confronting the false teachers concept. But I just love that because that's what you were experiencing. And so how did you begin? Obviously, here we talk about hearing God's voice. And so I love to hear the unique way that people discover hearing God's voice. And it is a journey. There's an ebb and a flow to it. It's not really so black and white. Everyone's a little nuanced the way they learn to hear the Lord. But how did you begin to recognize, oh, this is God talking to me. I need to respond to this or obey this? Or how did you start to recognize that?
The scripture that matters to me in this regard is Isaiah 30:21. Whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you saying, "This is the way, walk in it." Yeah. And so all these years, I thought I was so brilliant. I heard all these things in my head, like, oh, I invented podcasting. Yeah, no, not really. I know who did that. I was just the conduit for it. But I have learned throughout the years to just listen, and some, things start to happen. Some call it, what's the word I'm looking for? Synchronicity. But that's really when you're on God's path and I'm listening and I'm hearing, and it's not necessarily like a voice is speaking to me, but the thought comes in and I evaluate the thought. I said, is this from God? Can this be from God? And if I think it is, then I will follow that. But I think God is speaking to us nonstop. We have so much what I call screen noise around us that it's hard for us to hear him. That's really the problem. But he's He's there. The Holy Spirit is there to guide us. If we are able to hear him and pay attention, then we'll be doing what he wants us to do. So it's not, it's just not a voice. It's something of, I mean, I get these 4 a.m. downloads from Throne Central is what I call them. Like, it's like last night, I really wanted, we had friends over and I didn't have a lot of time to prep for the show this morning. I said, God, I talk all the time. I said, God, I really need some help with what I'm going to do tomorrow, but I trust in you. I know you'll give me something. And I hoped he would give it to me in the morning, but he decided 4 a.m. was the right time. So I sleep very well. So I wake up like, what? And immediately he gives me, I just heard like 3 things, do this, do this, do this. And it was amazing. And it was just mind boggling. This happens to me a lot. And if it's between 3 and 5 a.m., to me, it's like, that's God's time. And if he's going to, I've actually had like crazy dreams. Oh, I forget what it was. But I wake up from this dream, I'm like, whoa, that was crazy. And then I hear in my head, you were sleeping really fastly. So I had to do something to wake you up. I couldn't get you awake. So I gave you that crazy dream, that kind of stuff. Now, I know that, young Christian, baby Christian, you got a lot of this kind of stuff, but my job has been to listen and to speak. So I think I'm pretty good at listening. I've learned to be quick to listen and slow to speak. I'm getting better at that. So yeah, that's how I hear him.
That's incredible. So talk to me then a little bit about, you said looking back over your life, you could see how the Lord was like putting pieces together and how it's unfolding. You've got Godcaster now, which you can feel free to introduce that idea and kind of what that's about as well. But what were some of the stories of where you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, that and that and that, those were such essential pivot points, and you can see kind of just the hand of God moving through your story?
Radio. Started when I was 13. My parents got me a Radio Shack 101 project kit. I won't bore you with what that is, but the last project was building an FM transmitter. I built that, had a little actually my grandmother gave me a transistor radio about this big. So this, when I was 7, and I would listen to basketball games under my pillow. And, I was just amazed by the sound. Not really a sports ball guy, but I loved hearing the squeak of the sneakers on the court, and how the announcers were calling the game, and it was just the whole theater of the mind really, really enthralled me. So I've always had kind of this broadcast and technical side moving together. And so when I was 13, I really built my first radio transmitter. This was in the Netherlands where I grew up, so it was kind of government-controlled stations. There wasn't a lot on the radio band. I learned antenna technology real quick, because you don't get far without an antenna on the roof. And my mom, bless her, she drove me around the block, see how far my signal would reach. It's like, what? And so from there, I went to a closed-circuit hospital radio station. So I really learned about captive audiences and local audience, and very small community-based radio. Then I went into big pirate radio stations in the Netherlands. It was a huge deal. We were in Amsterdam. We were on from Friday afternoon till Monday morning. The government stations were playing like Lawrence Welk and polka music. We were playing Chicago Warehouse, Madonna, Fun Boy 3. All this stuff that you couldn't get on the radio. And from there, I actually went to go study in the States, study communications, and that was not for me. It was like after 3 months, I'm running the radio station, and I was a freshman, everyone's running around drinking. I'm like, I grew up in Amsterdam. I'm not interested in this. So then I went back and sent out some letters, and literally within a month was doing a television show that was on half the country in Holland. Half the country watched it. And I was interviewing the Stones, Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, David Bowie. You name it, all the biggest names would all come through the Netherlands to this show. Of course, I spoke English, being an American. So all of that was clear. I'm being pushed through this broadcasting type system. Then very early on, I learned computers, and I built my first modem, literally acoustic modem, where I took apart an old phone and then put the elements in, and you put people probably can't even visualize what old phones look like. But anyway, and so this is, way before any modern computers. And when MTV called me to come and work for them, that's when I decided, okay, I'm going to get on this thing called the internet. There was no World Wide Web or anything. And so I really learned, I had, got ground level command line chops. Eventually wound up setting up a web server. I had registered mtv.com, which at the time you just emailed the guy like, hey, can I have mtv.com? Yeah, okay. Can I have curry.com? Yeah, okay. Can I have elvis.com? Yeah, okay. So I had all
Oh,
that.
wow.
And then Mark Andreessen, that's a name you might recognize. He emailed me. He was at college in Illinois. Said, hey, man, I got this thing called a web server, and you can use this Mosaic browser. And so I set that up. And once I saw that, I'm like, oh, I'm going to broadcast on this. And maybe it's just text and pictures right now, but we're going to broadcast on this thing. And so I left to start a company and wasn't quite sure what to do, but then wound up building some of the biggest corporate websites for Anheuser-Busch, and we built Budweiser.com, PlanetReebok.com, and it was all kind of, we were creating the entertainment from the assets they already had. They sponsor lots of sports and, kind of like what Red Bull does now. Took it public I ran a public company with 700 people. It was insane. Wow. And now I knew that wasn't my future because I was wearing suits and I'm like, this is not for me. I'm talking on CNBC. I'm talking about my stock price. So I left and then went back to Europe and actually with Dave Weiner developed the idea behind podcasting, kind of this RSS feed subscription model with an attachment. There's a whole, I won't bore you with the whole story behind it, but again, like, wow, I'm so brilliant. I came up with these ideas. And it wasn't until 2003 when I saw my first iPod, I'm like, I know what that is. That's one of these things. That's not for music and playlists or like a digital Walkman. I know, boomer talk. This is a radio receiver, and I know exactly how to put it together. I'm not a great coder or technology guy, but I knew what I wanted, and I cobbled it together. And then started a podcast. We didn't have the name podcast, the Daily Source Code. So I wanted to bring in developers who would develop this, and they came and they just started to build stuff. And then people who wanted to broadcast came. So I'm giving you this whole story of how God is in this. And we had public radio, and PBS, NPR, BBC. They all loved it. Oh man, we can broadcast on this thing. And this other group who showed up, and they were very interesting. They actually were making lots of radio, or they were buying airtime on AM radio stations and C-band satellite at night. And I'm like, oh, you guys are doing religious broadcasts. At this point, we had the name podcast. So I say, you guys are the Godcasters. Welcome aboard. I still have friends from like Steve Webb from, more than 20 years ago. Focus on the family. John, and Rob, they showed up pretty soon. Like, hey, I know you guys. So that's kind of how it all came together. And I just went through a long period of just doing my podcast, really, until my third wife. So Tina and I have been together for 10 years now. And just, it's like God brought us together for this journey. A lot of it has to do with the music that really fills her soul, and that fills mine as well. But just, having a couple of miles behind us and some rodeos, it's just been so wonderful to be on this path together. It has been just, you think at a certain point, like, okay, I'm 58, 59, getting towards 60. I'm doing my podcast. I'll probably die spitting in the mic, that's fine. And then all of a sudden this happens, like, oh, how old is Abraham? I think I can go for another 60 years. I'm going all the way. I got stuff to do for the Lord.
I love that. I love that. And you in your journey of the podcasting, Steve Jobs called you at some point, right? And was like, hey, help me.
Yeah, that was 2005. I think 2005 or 2006. And so we had everything kind of running, and people were interviewing me about this. And I get a call. Yeah, Steve Jobs wants to know if you can meet him. I'm like, I don't know. What, really? What day? So, okay. So of course, I go meet him. And I've interviewed a lot of people, met a lot of people. Quincy Jones would be very high on my list of fantastic, interesting people that I've interviewed with or sat down with. Jobs is way up there, and he was really nice. He wanted to know about how we did stuff, what we needed, and it turns out they'd been following what I was doing because I was hosting my files on. It's the precursor to iCloud. It's called .Mac, and there was so much bandwidth being pushed out at the time. They were like, "What is going on?" And apparently, according to Steve, he told the guys, "Let Curry do it. Let's just see what he's doing. We'll just keep an eye on him. Let him do whatever he wants to do." So I was sucking up all of Apple's bandwidth with my daily source code show. And, and we had an hour-long talk, and it was just really, really nice. And then he says, "I really want to put podcasting into the iPod officially and into iTunes. Is that okay?" I'm like, "Yeah," because, we built this so no one owns it. Otherwise, it would never have taken off like this. So, yeah, of course. And I just wanted my blessing over it. And I said, "And here's the first directory that we built. We got 5,000 shows, put that in it." And then he literally launched it a few days later. So it was just a courtesy call, which was really nice.
That is very kind of him. So that's incredible. So then tell us what you're doing now, because obviously you and I got connected because of Godcaster, and we just launched with my whole network being on Godcaster, but I'm interested in you sharing about your vision behind it and what are you hoping to achieve with that?
Well, for me, the initial vision was there from my partner, one of my partners, Gordon Marcy. And he saw the need for an integrated on-demand solution for faith-based radio stations, because what's really happening there is people are listening to their radio station and they're hearing the programs, and the programs are all available on podcasts. And so people are being sent away from the station, which still has their local information and some things that are important to a local community. And they're subscribing to these podcasts directly, and the station's losing them if everything kind of runs on giving. So you can't really find out, hey, did someone give to my ministry through this station? Or, so all that was kind of broken. And I was invited to do the keynote at the Spark Media Conference. I don't know if you know Misty Phillips. And I'm like, I don't really like doing any kind of conferences, but that could be fun. And Tina, and we took Pastor Jimmy and Annette. We all went together. It was like, this will be fun. We'll just hang out with some Christian broadcasters. And right away I said, "Hey, John Fuller, look at all these guys. I know all these guys from 20 years ago." And so Gordon and I got connected through that. And meanwhile, Dave Jones and we had kind of taken back control of podcasting from Apple by building the free and open podcast index, because Apple was starting to deplatform podcasts during COVID. I'm like, that's not how it's supposed to work. I mean, it's decentralized. And if everybody's getting all the information off of Apple, that's a problem. So we became the alternate source. And now 70 apps and services use the index. It's all donation based. So Gordon contacts me, and I wasn't quite sure what he wanted. He was looking for a back end for his system, and it was called Glory Stone at the time. After like 3 hours of calls, you've been on calls with Gordon. Gordon can talk for a long time. He's very persuasive. I just got this, I just heard like, stop resisting. And it's just stop resisting. Just get in business with this guy. And I told Tina, I said, if you ever hear me say I want to start a business, you got to stop me, because, it's just too much. But I wasn't technically starting a business. I was joining in a partnership. And Gordon gracefully and graciously allowed Dave and I to come in. We're all equal partners. And so we really brought all of our skills of, 20 plus years of podcasting, how it works behind the scenes, so that not only can radio stations manage their online presence also in their own app, but again, the interesting thing is we're seeing churches now want to become the cultural voice in their otherwise forgotten neighborhoods, because radio is kind of now this, national programming. There's very little really hyper local programming. So now you can have Focus on the Family and Max Lucado, but you can also have Pastor Jimmy's podcast. And churches are hungry for this. And they also upped their technology game during COVID. So everybody's doing a podcast. And this is really for your audience. We built an app called Godcaster, all one word. You can get it for Apple or Android. And it immediately, based on your location, brings up the closest Godcaster stations to you. Now, that could be a radio station, could be a church, could be a ministry. You can search by map, you can search by program. And we have, I believe, just a premier in-car experience. We spent a lot of time on that, so that really works well with CarPlay and Android Auto. And you're going to be kind of in a quote unquote safe environment. You explore around the world. Well, what are people talking about there? I can dip into a live stream of podcasts. I can follow podcasts. I can follow a station, and it becomes kind of I I love like popping over to New York, and then I hear a sermon like, oh, I want to follow that guy. And, then I'll maybe follow the ministry that is putting out his entire series, or the radio station. And before you know it, there's just literally what it is. Godcaster is live streams, radio stations, podcasts. It's all in there, and it's all we have an attitude about it. We're here for the kingdom and for his word. And that also comes in the form of some news-based podcasts, but it's all in there. And that's really been the driving force. And I got to tell you, when we met you and you brought the Imagine Media Network to Godcaster, I love this because I dip in all the time on your live stream. I'm like, what is this? Okay, I gotta, and I can immediately go and listen to that episode, whatever the podcast was, right there, even in the car, or on the app. And it's just a great discovery mechanism, which I believe is really the true next version of what radio is. And although there's a lot of talk about video, and video certainly has its place, you're never going to be able to replace just listening, walking, driving, doing the dishes, doing chores, whatever it is. There's something, and that's me, that's this kid who was listening to this. And that to me is the most exciting form of media, is just the spoken word, and of course, music.
That's so cool. And if Godcaster, let's say your biggest dreams for it come true, what does that look like as far as the impact Godcaster has on the world and people?
Well, what I heard is go lift 1,000 voices. So that means I got to have at least 1,000 stations, whether it's radio stations or churches that are stations or ministries. It's 1,000. I'm like, God, I'll bring you 2,000. So that's it. It's not my dream. It's what I've been commissioned to do. And so, yeah, that's really what I want to achieve.
So good. And I love that I'm able to help with that vision, because I bring 40 of those with my podcasters.
No, but you are the first like actual network that is not a true ministry or a radio station. And you have I think you have incredible insight and vision that you want. Okay. And by the way, not only that, you have kept us on our toes. You have found things that were broken, things that were wrong, things that were not understandable, and I really appreciate that. We all do, and we all. Oh, Jenny Lee sent an email. We all go like, oh, what did she find? Oh, no. What did she find? What happened now? I mean, we never would have been able to. We never would have integrated with the Wix platform if it wasn't for you. I mean, this is stuff that is of great value to us.
Oh, well, that's great that you feel that way. Actually, I feel like I worked for an app for a while. They actually paid me to find all the problems in their app, and I used it both as a stylist, but then as a consumer. And they paid me to help develop their app. And the value was they went from 2% conversions when I started with them to 80% conversions of customers. And so we were, but it was the grace of God, because I didn't even finish college, and I was advising this $12 million company in their app. And so anyway, so I think sometimes I look at it with troubleshooting eyes, but I've enjoyed it.
Like me, you didn't go to college. We didn't get that bad programming. Somehow I think we were lucky.
Yeah, probably so.
Think we got a good deal on that.
That's probably true. What I love about Godcaster, because we've been using it for a few months now, and this is super simple, but it actually becomes a wall for people, is that there's no login. So like I can just send the direct link, and people don't have to worry about figuring out their Apple ID to log in, their Spotify, and like, oops, I forgot to pay, so now I'm blocked, whatever. Like there's not all those barriers. And so I feel like that's a super simple but valuable part of the platform, that they don't have to log into it.
Thank you for saying that. We also, our promise is we will never run ads. We're not going to charge anybody for anything. We obviously have our customers who are in the app, but for the audience, the whole idea is it's all for you. It's all there, free, no hoops, no no paywalls, no levels to jump into or whatever. That would not. And again, we really want it to be just the best. Certainly in car, there's so much room for people to listen to things in their automobiles. And so we really put a lot of work. Paul, who does our app, really put a lot of work into just making it something that is compelling to use, easy. You can switch between live stuff, kind of like the way you used to hit the pre-programmed buttons on your radio. It's and I think that's really the future of mobile entertainment, is really the phone connected to the vehicle.
I agree. I love that you guys integrated that live feature. In fact, before this interview, I was on a call with someone interested in joining the network. And so I was showing her Godcaster and the live stream feature, and she was like, that's really cool. So she was pretty excited about that.
Excellent.
Oh, awesome. So for people that are listening, obviously Godcaster is something that anybody can download if they want to hear Christian voices that are preaching the word, doing their shows, radio, music, all of that. What about if someone wants to be on Godcaster?
Go to godcaster.fm. Actually, the link is in the app itself. We are just about to launch what we call the self-serve onboarding. So you'll be able to, because we actually had people like, I want it now. How do I get it now? Like, well, we don't have that set up yet. So that'll be done within, it's in testing now. But if someone wants a demo, we're happy to jump on a call with you and walk you through it. But we're kind of gearing up for this new NRB in February to have self onboarding and everything all set up. We're a small company. We have no outside investors. We're not paying ourselves anything. It's, we're keeping everything running. But there's a much bigger goal here than to make money. This really, we're on a mission. We're on a mission from God.
That's a big deal. And for those of you guys who are listening, Godcaster also provides a way that many times, people love a podcast. They like Java with Jen, or they love Adam's shows, and they want to give back, but they're not really sure how to. Godcaster has a little heart bubble on each show that if you click that, then it'll take you right to a donation page. So if you wanted to give back to your favorite podcast or support a network that you listen to, a radio station on there, it makes it super easy. So I love that aspect of it as well. Well, Adam, thank you so much for sharing your story and just coming on and giving my listeners a more intimate look into your journey and how you found the Lord and what you've done that has truly impacted all of our lives.
Well, thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you. As I said before, you're very valuable to what we're doing, and your feedback has just been fantastic. You literally could not find someone and pay them to do what you do. So thank you for that in addition. But it's been wonderful, and it's been wonderful to see your network and to listen to all these different voices. And there's always something new and entertaining. I'm always blown away, like, wow, it's very different than a lot of your typical big national faith-based program. So it's really wonderful. And thanks for inviting me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, you guys, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this, hearing the peek into Adam Curry's history, share this episode with a friend, because A, that's how we get the show into more hands, but B, you just never know who's going to be impacted by what was shared on this episode. So thank you guys so much for listening. Hit subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's show. Listen, let's stay connected. Come follow me on Instagram at Java with Jen, where you can follow the latest and say hey. It's a really great way to stay in touch. Many of you have also asked how you can support the show. You can make donations through the Anchor app or on Patreon, or of course by sharing, rating, and reviewing on social media and iTunes as well. Your heartfelt feedback always reminds me why I do this. Also, don't miss our merch store, where you can get super cool Java with Jen swag and coffee. Find it at javawithjenmerch.com. Until next time, remember, hearing God's voice is simple, and He wants to be a part of your everyday life. See you next week.